Did you know that the Old Testament does talk about life after we die? And then the New Testament obviously has a lot more detail about it. So we do not sleep. We're not consciously asleep after we leave our bodies. Truth is, we're going to go to a place that we're consciously awake. And the Old Testament even says that. Let me read that to you. And then I want to share good news. And I put on my broken glasses. Let's consider all the way back to the book of beginnings. It says about Abraham. God tells Abraham this promise. Let me read it to you. It's Genesis chapter 15. He tells him that when he dies, he's going to live to a ripe old age, and that he's going to be laid down with his fathers. And he actually gives a prophecy about his descendants in chapter 15. He says, God said to Abraham, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, that was Egypt, where they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. Now think about their faith. Okay? Faith and dying, this goes hand in hand, this conversation. So they knew when they were in Egypt, the word of the Lord told them, as descendants of Abraham, that they were going to be oppressed in Egypt for 400 years, but they had a time limit. But I will also judge that nation whom they will serve, and afterward they will come out with many possessions. They did. Remember, they came out with possessions. This is a prophecy. And as for you, Abraham, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you will be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation, they will return here. Okay, so life after death. He said that's a prophecy. You know that they were, it's important. He promised Abraham he would be buried with his fathers, but he was only buried with his wife. But listen closely to the word of the Lord. Did that prophecy come true? Were they enslaved in Egypt for 400 years? Yes. Did they leave with many possessions? Yes. Did they return to the land that Abraham was promised? Yes. If those came true, then the next one came true, which is he would go. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace and be buried at a good old age. So when he dies, he's going to his fathers. He was not buried, his body was not buried with the body of his fathers. So Genesis 25, these are the years of Abraham's life. He lived 175 years. Then Abraham breathed his last death. This is Genesis 25, chapter 25. An old man satisfied with life. Okay, he was gathered to his own people. Then his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah. It's in the field of Ephron, the son of Zophar the Hittite, facing Mamre. This field Abraham purchased from the sons of Heth. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. Do you see that? So Abraham left his body and went to his fathers consciously awake in the afterlife. Then we go to the New Testament and Jesus gives us more detail. Let's look at the same context. Abraham, we're still talking Abraham. Jesus talks about Abraham and that being alert and awake after life. Jesus tells us this to squelch any argument that we have soul sleep. Now, there was a rich man, okay, who dressed in fine linen, enjoyed himself splendor every day, and a poor man named Lazarus, right? Talks about how they live, but then they both die. And one was carried to Abraham's arms, and the rich man died and was buried. Do you see the outcomes? In Hades, the rich man lifting his eyes, and he was in torment. He's in a place where he's consciously awake in the afterlife, in torment, and even has a conversation. That means his soul awake. His soul's awake. And he cries out and says to Abraham, the one we talked about, remember? And he says to have mercy on me. He's begging for mercy. He's suffering. At least send Lazarus down to put his finger in water. Let me just take one little drip of water out of the suffering I've got. I am in an agony in this flame. So he's in a place where there's fire. We talk about the lake of fire in Hades. Modern churches are wanting to throw that out, but Jesus didn't. We got to follow the truth, being a truth church. So he's in a flame. He's suffering and desperate for a drop of water. And then Abraham says, child, remember. Oh, that's an heir of Abraham too. Child, remember that during your life you received your good things and Lazarus bad things. But now he is being comforted. He's in a place of peace, of comfort, and a godly side of the grave. But you are in agony. And besides all of this, between us, there's a great chasm, so we can't even get to you anyway. God is determined that your spirit, your soul, is in a place that we can't get to, and you can't leave that place of torment and come over to peace. So after the grave, it's determined two places. But then, and he said to Abraham, then I request of you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house. See, he's not even repentant, to be honest. For I have 5 brothers, in order that he may warn them that they will not come to this place of torment. And Abraham said, they have the promises written in the word. They have the Bible. Aaron, they didn't say that. Basically, listen to what he's saying. He says, they have the Moses and the prophets. That's the Old Testament. That's the scriptures up to that point. They have the Moses, Genesis, Exodus, they have all the stuff here. They have the written word. You had access that to you, but you didn't listen to it, did you? Especially what's happening in the grave. But he said, no, Father Abraham, if someone would have come back from the grave, listen to what he's saying, they will repent. If someone would rise from the dead, they'll repent. But Abraham said, if they won't listen to what is written here, the Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded even if someone arises from the dead. If you can't believe this, then you're not going to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. If I read this to you and you reject this, how can you believe the truth about Jesus Christ, who did rise from the dead? So you see that there was 2 outcomes of conscious awareness after the grave. Do you see that? But for you, one last verse about the afterlife. After Jesus had died and resurrected, Christians now go to a different place. Not everybody goes to this place after they die. Only those who have been perfected in their spirit. Okay? Let me read it to you in Hebrews. Man, truth is so good. It really is. So here's what happens. You have come to Mount Zion rather than Mount Sinai. Okay, this is the heavenly Zion. This is the spiritual. You have come to Mount Zion. What is that? To the city of the living God. This is spiritual. The heavenly Jerusalem, where there are myriads of angels. It's the general assembly and the church of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven. And to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous that have been made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, to the sprinkled blood, which speaks better than the blood of Abraham. Did you catch that? The church of the firstborn, Jesus was the firstborn, right? Died, and what is the firstborn? Jesus said in John, unless you are born again, you cannot enter this place that I'm reading. You cannot enter heaven. If you have to be born again. And then the only way to be born again, this is the new birth, is through faith in Jesus. When you invite Jesus into your life, you will be born again. You will have a brand new spirit Firstborn. You are born of Christ, the firstborn from the grave. That's what Paul tells us in Corinthians. This place is the general assembly of only those who've accepted Jesus. If you have not accepted Jesus, you will not go to this place. You will go to the flame, as Jesus said. You can live this life and be famous and have tons of money, all the food you want, all the clothes you want, all the houses you want, like the rich man, and live blessed and joyful, laugh and joy. What a great life. And then when you die, none of those things will save you. Your money won't save you, nothing will. And just like Lazarus in a place of peace, like Abraham to the place of his fathers, like those who've accepted Jesus to this place, Zion, the general assembly of those who are the firstborn. You are now enrolled in heaven. Your name is written in the Lamb's book of life. And you will go to God, who will be the judge of all. All will be judged. And to the spirits made righteous. And that's what you are when you accept Jesus. Your spirit has been made righteous through Jesus if you ask him in. But if you reject him, then you will be rejected. That's the truth. That's the new birth. That's life after death. It's in the old and the new. And there's more in the Old Testament than what I shared. But Abraham was promised to go with his fathers, but he was buried only with the body of his wife. So then that had to been speaking of a spiritual afterlife. That's good stuff. Bible tells us everything, man. I'm Pastor Aaron, Grace and Truth Church in Dunbar. We meet on Sundays at 10. God bless you guys, media missionaries. Share this. Share the gospel. We got